Hey everyone, welcome in Golden Blue Dudes, our Sunday show after the Saturday game. So we've got some guests coming in. Well, let me get him in here. So with us today we've got Todd Guy, Jeff, and we have our Notre Dame resident Notre Dame fan, Will, with us as well. We might have a couple others coming in. D4 said he might stop by and stuff. So we want to talk about tomorrow's or yesterday's games and stuff. And but there was a question here, and I'm going to try to address this. It says, "Can you please explain the clean snap rule that Pac-12 Brett cited? So when the center snaps the ball into his butt and BYU recovered, Oregon gets the ball. So what happens is there's a clean snap rule that says that the ball snapped has to be one continuous motion. So from the time the center starts to snap that ball, got to be one continuous motion. If he pauses, if he hits his leg, if he hits his gut, if he hits his stomach, whatever, that's not a continuous motion. So therefore, it's not a legal snap, and it becomes a false snap, and they would be penalized. Um, that's the only thing I can figure you're talking about. I didn't see the particular play of the game, um, but the clean snap rule just says plainly that it has to be one continuous motion from the time the ball he starts snapping the ball till the time it reaches the quarterback. Now he can roll on the ground to the quarterback, but it's got to be one continuous motion from his hand. So till the time the ball is released. That could be the only thing that I'm thinking about. Did anybody see that play that he's talking about between Oregon and BYU?
No, unfortunately, I missed that play. I watched quite a bit of the game, but I did not see that play.
Only the highlights for
Yeah,
me.
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't see it either. I didn't see the play, so I'm sorry I can't elaborate on the play more, but that's the rule. So I hope that helps you a little bit there. Who said that? Schwartz all year. So, well, guys, so we had some games yesterday, and I don't know about you, but if you watched the Texas A&M Miami game, you was probably bored out of your mind and wondering what in the hell are you doing watching college football.
Yeah, I know the U was without, one of their best players, but that offense got inside the 20 4 times and settled for field goals 3 times. I mean, that's the way the U was playing to begin the year. I really thought, they might be back and they might actually be able to make a run. But the way they played Texas A&M yesterday, if that team shows up, they'll be lucky to go 7-5, 8-4 in the ACC.
Yeah, they didn't have any offensive production. Will, did you watch the game?
I almost fell asleep, but yes. Yeah, I mean, Miami's offense left a lot. Both offenses left a lot to be desired. I mean, A&M's, they looked a bit better, but I don't think either of these teams are going to be contenders in any of their conferences this season.
How does Appalachian State score more points on Texas A&M than Miami can muster?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I mean, I guess the A&M players were more up for this game, and they kind of thought they were just going to just walk right through them. So.
Well, and you look at A&M the last, 3 years, they're kind of like Texas. They play to the level of their competition.
Mm-hmm.
They play a great team. Hey, they're up for it. They're playing. Last year, what was it, Colorado? They really struggled against Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And then turned around and played Alabama like a top 5 team and then blew the rest of the season, So yeah. I think that's part of A&M's problem. I think they see the name on the jersey across from them and play accordingly.
So Sergeant Pickles with a $1.99 super chat. Thank you, Sergeant Pickles. He says, University of Washington, Oregon, Washington State, huge wins last 2 weeks. Let's go. Yeah, that was a really good win by Oregon yesterday over BYU. That was kind of unexpected for me. It didn't surprise me that Oregon won the game. Just surprising how they won the game.
Mhm.
To me, it kind of makes me question Baylor, because the way
Yeah.
BYU played Baylor the week before, and then if you watched any of the Oregon BYU game, I don't want to take anything away from Oregon, but BYU just looked a step slow on all the plays, and just they didn't look like they did the week before. It looked like a whole new team, and they just didn't look like they had it. Now, my question would be for Sergeant Pickles. He's up on Washington, Oregon, Washington State. I would also think Oregon State is up there too. My question is, Oregon is ranked, the other three are not. But obviously all three of them deserve to be ranked. So will all four of the Northwest schools be ranked?
I think they deserve to be, but I think that the powers of the SEC wanted Oregon ranked to make it look better for Georgia. I think that might be part of it.
Well, now you're also going to run into the problem. Okay, let's rank Washington, Washington State, and Oregon State. But what about Kansas? The way Kansas is looking, they're not ranked. They deserve to be ranked also. I think it's time.
Yeah.
And I'm an SEC guy, but it's time to get rid of A&M out of the rankings, get rid of some of these SEC teams, and bring in teams that really deserve to be ranked up to this point. I think too many fan bases, and Alabama's a big one, but too many fan bases on week 2, week 3. Well, we need to be number 1, or who cares? It's week 3. Put the teams where they really belong. The cream will rise to the top, and by the end of November, we're going to know who's in the playoffs.
And I think you're totally right, Jeff, because I think, and guys, sorry, I was having some minor tech issues. But I think part of that goes along with the idea of understanding that the rankings need to be a little more fluid. Like you aren't like number 9 and then you're number 9 until you die. They need to be more fluid in the early weeks of the season, certainly. We're in week 3, and so you can say, this team was better than we thought. Okay, this team was not. Right now, a lot of the rankings philosophy is this just, blinders view of like you're number 7 until you die. And I think that's kind of a false thing that we get right now with how some of these coaches and some of the reporters rank folks. It's like, prove me wrong rather than like, let's look at the body of work. Mark Rogers does his, and we love to make fun of it, but he does his top 25 that actually makes sense every week. And when you think about it now, I mean, obviously, I think Bama's not on there yet because there's sort of the eccentricities of the early weeks. But as he goes on, I think it's really well done because he's actually saying, okay, what does the body of work say? I think that's a good thing. You could maybe sprinkle a little mix of the two approaches.
I like it.
Come out with a good rank.
I like the way he does that. Yeah. I do like the way he does that. Hey, I had a question earlier. Let me read the super chat real quick first. Sergeant Pickles says, no, it meant there was another one before that. Packer 910 says, how the hell is Florida still in the top 20? Yeah, I would very agree. Sergeant Pickles says UW is ranked 18th in AP now. Washington State should be as well, I guess, is what he's saying. So I missed the Washington State game yesterday, so I apologize for that. But there was a question earlier. Did you get to watch the BYU Oregon game yesterday, Tony?
Yes, I watched the whole thing.
Okay, so there was a question earlier, and I tried to answer the best I could, but I didn't see the game, so I don't know what they're talking about. They said, can you please explain the clean snap rule that the Pac-12 ref cited? So when the center snaps the ball into his own butt and BYU recovered, Oregon gets the ball.
I don't know the details of that particular play. Whoever does that can just Google it.
Yeah, I didn't get to see the play, so I didn't know.
I'd have to look up the exact play. I'm not really sure why they're. I mean, Pac-12 refs are pretty bad, but stuff like that is pretty ironclad in the review. So
yeah.
And I'm sorry for not paying attention to the exact thing. It certainly one play wasn't going to swing it one way or the other in that game.
No, it was not at all. So let's get back to talking about the about that big win for Kansas. So that was a huge win for Kansas, the biggest win they've had in 10 years, easy in that program. Going on the road and taking on a ranked Houston team, and not just beating them. It wasn't like last week when they had to beat West Virginia in overtime. They actually just stomped Houston. That game was never in doubt. Did you all get to watch any of that game? I watched that entire game. That was really a good game.
I didn't watch.
Oh, it was
I
a
was
great
laughing at
game for
Dana
you,
Holgorsen.
Joey.
I'll
I
tell
was
you
laughing
something.
at Dana Holgorsen the whole time.
An interesting fact about that was through 3 games right now, Kansas has scored 159 points. The last 2 times in the first 3 games, they scored at least 150 points. They scored 155 points in 2007. That was the year they went 10-2 and made the Orange Bowl. And the time before that was back in the 70s. I don't remember the exact year, but they ended up going 9-2 that year. So I really think Texas lost to Kansas before it was cool. And now it's going to be kind of cool to lose to Kansas, because I'll tell you what, the way Kansas is playing, you can honestly look at their schedule and, they're going to go to a bowl this year easy, and they could go to a good bowl if they keep playing the way they're playing.
I don't see Duke beating them this week. And then they've got 2 games at home, but they got the next 3 games at home. Duke, Iowa State, TCU. It's very well possible they could be 6-0 going to Norman the following week, and that will be unheard of. And I could probably almost guarantee that College Game Day would be there for that.
I could see him going there. I do think the Duke game is going to be kind of a good game, because, honestly, I know who was Duke played. The best team Duke played was Northwestern. They're 3-0 also, so you're going to have the battle of the, basketball schools fighting it out to see, who belongs. So I think that game, I agree with you, Joey. I think Kansas wins it, but I think it might be an entertaining game.
Yeah, Duke might be better than Houston. We'll see.
Who would have thought that?
Now, everybody in the beginning of the year before the season even started, and I don't fault them for it, but all the hype was Houston is the best group of 5 teams. Can they make the playoffs? And now, at the end of the year, they might not even make a ranking.
Benny Rose, thank you for the $5 super chat. They say, I know I kicked the idea Nebraska, but how about Dion to UCLA? He fits Hollywood. He's proven he can coach and he can recruit. Well, that's true.
Yeah, that's a good question. UCLA is such an interesting situation right now. They're one of those teams that very much plays to the level of their competition, or at least they sort of shown that, no matter who that competition is. But I've cut them a little bit of. I haven't cut their fans slack this last week, because their fans deserve every bit of mocking that you can possibly give them, because you look in the end zone, you couldn't tell if it was a COVID game or not. But I do give UCLA a little bit of slack, because they took on a pretty good Sun Belt team. And I think right now, anybody who's taken on the Sun Belt and survives gets like a pass in my book. Like, just, sometimes it's just you take the win, and with the amazing week that the Sun Belt has had, I say a win is a win with that conference.
The thing with Dion, I think Dion needs to stay in the Southeast. That's where he's known. That's where he's got his, recruiting bed. The problem with UCLA could be a really great team if Kelly would decide to get 2 coaches who can recruit and study the transfer portal, because that's really UCLA's biggest problem. They don't recruit well. Kelly don't like to recruit. So he needs recruits and he needs the transfer portal. And I agree with Tony. I think the 9 people who have shown up for the UCLA games constantly, those 9 ought to be, awarded next year free tickets because I mean that's a pretty empty stadium every week.
Oh, I was forgetting the guy that took the picture because I only had 8.
Yeah,
I wasn't counting right.
Well, the September 30th, UCLA is hosting Washington. That'll be a heck of a game. That'll be an exciting game.
Oh, it's good. It might be. Although if the Washington team we just saw goes down to UCLA and plays the UCLA team we just saw, it's going to look like some kind of JUCO FCS nonsense, because that Washington team looked great, didn't they?
honestly, if that Washington team shows up the rest of the year, they might be Pac-12 champions going to the playoff. I mean, especially in the first half. I mean, they kind of let down a little bit in the fourth quarter, but you look at the way they totally dominated Michigan State in the first half yesterday. That's a scary team.
That's a scary team. That's a scary team. Now, my dad played for Michigan State, though, and my dad, he was just flummoxed yesterday and again this morning when I talked to him, and he pointed out though that Penix, sometimes there's, and this happens with teams, it happens with people. Sometimes there's a team that you own, and sometimes there's a team that owns you. And my dad said the funniest thing, and I admit I didn't watch Indiana play Michigan State, in the past recent few years, but my dad said that it was just, he knew the minute Penix transferred to Washington that they were toast, because he said Penix just owns Michigan State. And he said, yeah, you combine him with the talent of Michigan State, you put him under DeBoer, he's like, we were dead. Never had a chance. But I'll tell you what I think is good, and Jeff and I have talked about this before, the idea of getting the old blue blood powers, West Virginia, Texas, USC, Washington, Notre Dame, to be good again and relevant again and back in the story. We saw Husky Stadium be a sea of purple. We saw Dubs lead that team out onto a roar that sounded like, the engines at Boeing Field down the road, and just, the pandemonium that was Washington football. And we saw Oregon doing the same thing. My friend said Austin Stadium was as loud as he's heard it in a decade. And that, these are things that I think are good for the sport. The Oregon fan said some things that were pretty offensive, and Oregon has apologized, which is good and correct. I did have to laugh, though. I probably shouldn't say this, but they weren't, in their inappropriateness, they were nicer than they are to most fans. Oregon and Philly have kind of a special way of welcoming fans to their stadium. So, but I was glad to see Oregon apologize today. I thought that was a good thing.
I mean, it's better than what BYU did.
It's way better. Yeah.
Yeah. Way better.
What do you say, J-Dub? Hi, D4.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I think
Hey, J-Dub, is the Iowa game still going on?
it might as well be. I tell you, the team that could be the spoiler here is sitting at 3-0 right now, and that's Iowa State. I will be there for Baylor at Jack Trice Stadium this coming up Saturday. The following Saturday, they go to Kansas. Now, last year when Kansas came to Ames, it rained about 9.5 inches in 2 hours, but there was no lightning, and it was something like 53-6, 56. Iowa State absolutely. They 50-pointed them. Now, of course, that's last year, and all Iowa State's lost a lot, most of its power, but the Deckers kid has played really well at quarterback. And, by their standards, they're a decent 3-0 team. Now, does that mean they can beat Baylor? No, Baylor will come in and beat them. But Baylor had better not just decide to just walk off the bus. That won't be enough. They'll have to show up and play.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What kind of an alternate universe are we living in where major national implications come out of Iowa State, Kansas, Baylor? Meanwhile, winless Notre Dame needs a ref bailout to save themselves from Cal.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
What is happening to our world?
Yeah, I know. And Is there any
I love
team?
it. I actually love
you-
it. I actually love
is
it.
there-
But it makes
Is
me
there
laugh.
any team? Is there any team you would have rather set in the stadium for the first 3 games this year, other than Appalachian State?
No, exactly. There you go. Appalachian State is like the darling of ESPN Sports Center Power
Yeah,
with heroic, amazing games, stomping Texas A&M,
At-
walloping
at the-
Texas A&M.
at the very least, you're going to be thoroughly entertained for 60 minutes of football. That's the least you're going to get out of it.
Eastern Michigan went into the Valley of the Sun and laid the smackdown on Arizona
Yes.
State.
Yep.
In fact, the
And
big,
North,
the big
North, North
Benny Rose,
and the Bison almost trampled the Wildcats.
they did. In fact, the big
Vanity Rose,
rumor.
with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Vanity. And
Thank you, Andy
they
Rose.
say Dion has juice in Florida, Texas, and Georgia. Mix that with California kids that would line up to play for him. His swagger as coastal, not local. And
No,
that's
it's
true. He
true.
does have. When boy, he
I
mentioned something there,
Yeah.
Georgia. I don't
I will
think
say
anybody
this,
can beat Georgia this year.
I thought the
Yeah.
Jaguars were going to pull that off, and I thought our
Yeah,
Pac-12, I thought our Pac-12 crew was going to have a stroke.
they almost did. I'll tell you
I
one
tell you-
one weird thing about UCLA, guys, to keep in mind, and this Will probably knows this thing about Notre Dame, is UCLA is the #1 ranked academic public school in the country. And so one of the weird things about recruiting to UCLA, interestingly, is that it can be hard because like you have to get kids who can survive in the #1 public school in the country. Now that also helps their advantage. Notre Dame and Stanford, do the same thing here because you also get a lot of kids who are like, wow, I really want to go to the #1 ranked public school in the country. But it is hard for their recruiting. And I mean, they're same rank as or very similar to, same issue you have with Notre Dame, Michigan, USC, Virginia, all those places. But people forget that about UCLA.
Yeah, I
See, and
saw
I
a list.
wanted to
I-
ask Will a question.
I saw a list. I think it was. Oh man, I can't remember who it was, but it was a reputable website that listed the academic requirements, the 20 most difficult schools in the country to get into. And in the top 10, Harvard was #1, Stanford was #2, and then others in the top 10 included Northwestern, Notre Dame, and Vanderbilt.
Yeah, and Rice should be up there too, and
Duke.
Duke, UCLA.
Duke, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Duke was #3, and I was very surprised to see somewhere around 13 or 14, but firmly included on the list was Wake Forest, which I had no
Yeah.
idea was
Great school.
yeah.
And
Now, I knew
Wake-
Northwestern.
What was he
I
saying?
knew I
Well-
knew Northwestern and Illinois were tough to get into. Illinois is not as tough as it used to be. They've lightened up a little bit, but it's tough. A lot of my high school classmates, I grew up in Springfield, so there's a lot of joy this weekend because none of these people were Northwestern fans, and I went to school with a lot of guys that
From
went
Southern
to Southern
Illinois?
Illinois. Yeah,
What a
I
win
mean,
that
I
was.
must have had 25 classmates that went to Carbondale, for school, and they must be jumping up and down that the Salukis beat Northwestern. That's incredible.
Well, and I'll tell you the funny thing. So, and this is where I need to eat some crow, maybe get some like good seasoning for the crow that I have to eat. But when Northwestern played Nebraska, I said maybe we need to pause because these could be two good teams. And I
Right.
was partially right, but also very wrong because it turns out those are two terrible teams. We
I
saw
always feel
two
bad.
really bad teams in Ireland.
Yeah, I always
I
feel
want to
bad
get back to
because a really
hold on a
close
second,
friend of
okay,
mine,
Dad.
Sorry, Joey, what?
close friend.
It's okay. Go ahead, Jed. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. A really close friend of mine works in the football operation office at Northwestern. I was just over there for 4th of July weekend, I got a tour of their new facilities. It's a beautiful campus.
Oh,
Their
nice.
facilities are great. Coach Fitzgerald is awesome. So I don't delight when they're not good. I mean, I'm not rooting for them to win the Big Ten or anything, but it would be nice if they were, competitive. So it does kind of stink a little bit when they stink. But I tell you what, if you ever get a chance, if you're ever in the Chicago area and you have the time, go up to Northwestern's campus. It's a beautiful campus,
Stunning.
and their facilities are unreal. I mean, they're really, really good. But again, like Notre Dame, like Stanford, like UCLA, they by their own choice are eliminating a certain number of players. Saying
Yeah,
this
and
is
that-
going to be our
It
this
makes
is
it
going to
hard.
be our
Give me a
standard.
touchdown. Let
I
me
think
interrupt you,
we'll-
J-Dub. Give me a touchdown with a $5 super chat. Thanks. Give me a touchdown. He says, WU blows out an FCS school, and WU fans are suddenly satisfied with Neil Brown. Wonder what the sentiment will be when WU is 1-11 in November. Well, they won't be 1-11 in November. I can guarantee you that. But
I think they're going to
bottom
be
line,
okay.
the reason I'm happy, the reason I'm satisfied is because the players responded. They came out and played a game, and they played it to the best of their ability, and they didn't let up, even though it was an FCS school. They did what they were supposed to do, and that takes coaching. That means the coach did a good job getting his team ready to play because we did what we were supposed to do, and we was able to play the entire roster. Everyone played. So it was really a great game and a great way to make the fans realize that Neil Brown's a pretty good coach.
And I'll tell you.
Jeff-
Sorry. Go ahead.
Jeff, tag guy, Jeff, you was going to say something a while ago. I'm sorry. What was you going to say, Jeff?
Oh, I wanted to talk to Will a minute about Notre Dame. I've watched Notre Dame back with Rudy. Okay, that's how old I am. I always thought the tradition was Notre Dame rolled out their green jerseys only for big games. When did Cal become a big game?
Well,
When
they
they were
started.
0-2 and needed to win.
Well, they started doing it again for the Shamrock series, but they Notre Dame was selling out every week, but late in the Kelly era, I think 2019 it ended. So I think they wanted to make sure that they could get a sellout or at least close to it. So I think that's why they did it, to make fans excited about the game.
All right. Yeah,
And-
no, I was just curious because, like I said, I always thought, they always pulled that out when they were ranked high and Michigan was high, or when it come down to the end of the year and they're going to play USC and it's going to determine, a big bowl or who could win the national just really big games. So I was kind of curious because they come out in their green jerseys yesterday. I'm like, wait a minute, they're playing Cal. What's up with this?
Well, they announced it too. It was like a pre-announced thing, which also made me think it was to sell green jerseys. But no, I thought that it was good. I thought that was the game. I mean, it was an absolute ref bailout. That phantom.
I think we would have
touchdown
still
thing.
won. I think we would have still won, but I might be
No, that's a
biased.
complete argument. Well, I mean, it's Cal, so you probably still would have won. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It is. Cal probably would have found a way to Cal, but and I feel bad for Justin Wilcox and I feel bad for those kids. But somebody pointed out, which I thought was amazing. I said, haunted thing. I always say haunted things happen in that stadium, and somebody's like, yeah, well, when you took the $1.5 million check to come there, that you knew what you were buying.
Hey, Will, I made fun of, the fact that Tyler Buckner was ranked 66th in the nation as far as quarterback goes by Athlon Sports. How does it feel to now have a quarterback that wasn't even bothered to be ranked?
I mean, I like Drew Pine, I like Taylor Heineke because I'm a Commanders fan. I like both of the guys. They're both tough guys. I mean, Drew Pine loves Notre Dame. He loves the school just as much as I do.
Well,
And
when
he's
he
just
makes
not that good. I mean, he's not that good. I mean, I'm rooting for the guy and I want him to do well, but he's not a game changer.
How fast can you get Cade McNamara down there?
I mean, is he that much better than Cade? I don't know,
Yes.
but I mean, I'm sure Cade is a bit
Cade is
better.
that much better than any of them.
I mean, I would like Cade, but I feel like we can still win 8 or 9 games with Drew Pine.
So Drew Pine makes Stetson Bennett look like he's the prototypical quarterback.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far on Drew, but I don't know. I mean, he improved in the second half. He definitely improved in the second half. Like, we were not going to win that game if we played the way that we did in the first half, but Drew played better. He didn't miss as many open throws, and we won.
I
How do
mean,
you feel about-
you were
I'll tell you what.
almost as good. You were almost as good against Cal as UNLV.
All right.
I'll tell you what, a lot of
Just
people are talking about
teasing.
hot seats. A lot of people are talking about hot seats, and I've heard about Notre Dame's coach being on a hot seat, and of course West Virginia's Neil Brown being on a hot seat. But how about this score right here? Penn State 41, Auburn 12. Can you say hot seat?
They wanted him. They wanted Brian Harsin gone in the off season at the end of last season. The boosters are not letting him go another season.
No.
Yeah, like I have a
Auburn-
buddy that
Auburn-
goes to Auburn, and he absolutely wants Brian Harsin gone during the. Like, he's wanted Brian Harsin gone. It seems like ever since he got there, like they're like, why are we hiring this person? He's not qualified.
Hey,
And
Tony.
apparently, he's proven them right.
Tony, could that have been because of the death yesterday? You remember I told you how there was a death yesterday in Auburn. They lost a linebacker. Yesterday morning, he woke up to get a drink of water, and the toilet seat fell and broke his neck and killed him.
They have some struggles, but
Yeah, that's a bad team.
But I mean, the thing is like, Jeff, you talk about this all the time, and you are so spot on with this. Is that the problem is that Auburn's only frame of reference is Alabama, and they can't be Alabama right now, and they haven't been able to be Alabama, and so they're just going to keep doing this until they can reframe expectations or Nick Saban can die. One of the two.
That's the biggest problem with college football today. You go back to the 70s and 80s, when a team hired a coach, he knew going in he was getting 3 to 5 years, usually 4 to 5 years, to make a difference. And now coaches come in, and Auburn is especially, and it's kind of hurt other SEC fan bases. But what Nick Saban did made coaching really unrealistic in the SEC. Auburn thinks they're as good as us, and since Alabama's rolling every year, they think they should roll every year. And instead of giving a coach a couple years to turn it around, they have one really bad year, they want to fire him. You know,
Yeah.
it just don't make sense to do that. You got to give a coach time. It takes, like everybody's talking about Notre Dame right now. Well, how can you fire a coach that doesn't have his players? His system's just, 3 games old. I mean, come on, you got to give them time.
I'm not sure I want to give our OC that much time, although he was better. I feel like he had a good game plan for Drew Pine, but I still feel like the team offense should be doing better against Cal.
Although after his headphones conversations with Drew Pine, I think there might not be NBC cameras on him in the next game.
I think that they should have gave Tommy Reese the head coaching job instead of Marcus Freeman.
All right, nice troll, D4, nice troll.
Actually, though, Will, seriously, congrats to your Irish. They got to win when they needed it.
I think that
And that
we could
makes-
beat
that
North
makes a big difference.
Carolina. I don't know if we will. I mean, if we can't score in a Gene Chizik defense, we're not going to score in any other defense that we're going to be playing this year. So
That's true. That's true.
Before
Notre Dame will be okay.
I want to go
D4,
to
how
a
about
game,
Texas
but I don't think I
yesterday?
can.
Was you satisfied?
I might be.
How about who?
By Texas yesterday, was you satisfied with the 41-20 score over UTSA?
Well, see, kudos to Texas, UTSA. Man, they come out, they game plan perfectly to start that game. They caught us slipping on the onside kick. Our guys were leaving early to get down the field to, turn around and block. And that's all film study. And they hit the double pass on us, took the momentum. We went down like 17-7. But what I'm satisfied with the most is we went into the locker room tied 17-17, and we come out and made the adjustments necessary to pull away and stay away. You know, a 21-point win, that's nothing to shake your head about. UTSA is a decent team. I'm not going to say they're a great team or anything like that. But when it all comes down to it, we beat who we should have beat, and we made the adjustments in the second half that we did not make last year, and that's what I'm most satisfied about.
Well, and plus D4, you guys have injuries, and I mean, I know people say, well, injuries, but I mean, you had a backup quarterback. You know, I mean, you have what, one or did your second cornerback come back, or are you just out the one now?
He was in and out. His ankle is still really screwy.
But I mean, you do have key injuries, you know, and I mean that does, you know, make a big difference. And also, I think Texas sometimes has the problem, like I was mentioning earlier with Texas A&M. Sometimes you come out and you play against the name on the jersey, you know, the other name. So, you know, you played Alabama last week. That team that played last week against Alabama, that's a top 10 team. That was a great team. You know, they did what they were supposed to do. And I wonder, you know, this week playing a little lesser team, you know, with injuries and that, did that play a little bit in the first half?
Yeah, I could have had the hangover, you know, from the Alabama game, or, you know, not getting up for a certain opponent. But if you're a team like Texas is trying to become, you can't have those problems. You can't not get up for a game and get caught slipping. So with that being said, you know, we enter conference play next week against Texas Tech, then West Virginia, and we have to, you know, Sarkisian's, you know, thing, all gas, no brakes, through the whole rest of our schedule. It ain't gonna get easier. That we've had our two supposedly easy games in Louisiana Monroe and UTSA. So we definitely can't overlook anybody, you know, especially, you know, the new Kansas of the world in West Virginia.
Yeah, you guys started that D4. I blame you for Kansas. You guys lost to them last year, and then after that, they decided, well, hell, if we can beat Texas, we might as well be a good team and keep winning.
Yeah. We did, like Tony says, we did it before it was cool.
Yeah, exactly. But I'll tell you
So
what,
here's
for
a
Texas,
question.
my birthday's going to be big because you guys play Oklahoma on my birthday, and that there, you know, if Texas plays, like I said, against teams like they played against Alabama, that could determine the Big 12 championship game right there.
So we have a question here for Tony from Sergeant Pickles.
What's
He
that?
says, "Hey
Sergeant
Tony,
Pickles. Hold on,
USC
I'm giving Sergeant Pickles a dubs right now. A dubs up for Sergeant Pickles.
why don't you go ahead and read it, Tony?"
USC will beat up on everyone except Utah, but not matter what comes from the north. Go Dogs. I think they trip up in the Pac championship. Hey, who knows what's going to happen with this Pac season? I think we're seeing some good teams. I think that's really exciting. I think seeing a resurgent UW is awesome. Seeing Oregon kind of lick their – I don't think Oregon came out of nowhere, though. I think Oregon just got hit by the steamrolling train that is Georgia that is hitting everybody that is in its way. Yeah, I would love to see USC go through the season. USC has problems. The team has very real problems that it is continuing. I mean, this is we called it Frankenstein team. You know, they're continuing to come together. They're doing awesome stuff, but the defensive line has a lot of problems. The offensive line has been really good, but is very thin. So when we had some guys get, you know, hurt for an hour, you know, that it was having effects. And so injuries may have effects. This is not like 2004, 2005, where I felt like the USC team was sort of like, you know, unstoppable and destined. But, you know, if they keep doing what they're doing, I think they're going to have a lot of success, and it's going to be really exciting and kind of fun to watch.
Well, you held
Yeah, and I
Fresno
think
State to
Sergeant
7
Pickles ought to
points.
be
That's
happy.
pretty good.
They did. It was a bend, don't break defense. It was one of those games, Joey, where you're watching, you're like, oh God, this is so close. And then you're like, well, actually, it's not that close. But, you know, but it was that bending defense that just didn't break. And if you can keep doing that, you can cobble it together. I actually think that's kind of what USC did in 2003 when they won that national championship.
And
I do
that's how
want to
the
let
Ducks had
everyone
a lot
know
of
that
success on defense as well.
in 20 minutes, in about 15 minutes, we're going to end this live stream, and we will start up another live stream over in Patreon. Letting everybody know, if you're not a Patreon member, be sure and join Patreon page. You can join for as little as $2 a month, and we'll go over there and we're going to talk about the AP poll that's been released, the new AP poll. So another game I want to talk about. Man, this is sad. South Florida 28, Florida 31. And someone mentioned a while ago, Florida moved up in the rankings. How did they do that? And I agree. How would you do that? South Florida's a horrible team. They're just not that good. And, in Florida to struggle like that should not happen. Florida, they started out the year pretty good and stuff, but now they look like they're starting to struggle.
The problem with
Anybody
Florida
get to watch
is the problem with Florida is Kentucky laid the blueprint. This is how you beat them. If you focus on not allowing AR-15, and I know you don't like that name, but he'll always be that to me, AR-15, if you stop him from scrambling and running, keep him in the pocket and make him beat you with the passing, he can't do it. And so I think if Utah would have had that blueprint, it would have been a totally different game in game one. And the only reason a Florida team will move up in the polls is it's got that SEC on its jersey. Unfortunately, that's the only reason.
But that brings the question, is Utah really as good as we thought since they lost to that Florida team?
I don't know. They steamrolled San Diego State.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of parity, too.
They went to the Swamp. Now, if we take that game and it's played in Utah, what's the score?
Yeah, they win by 10.
So I mean, and I think if Utah had the blueprint, and played a little bit better defense, because you look at Utah gave up 451 yards, and then Kentucky turned around and gave up less than 300. So they just played defense wrong. They had the wrong D in there to stop AR, and I think again, it's week 3. Rankings don't really matter at this time. The cream's going to rise to the top. We need to get more games, and once the season gets on, we'll actually know who is the best. Yeah, one team might look terrible and they could come on, and other teams, you can't fault a team for one bad game. It's kind of like the Oregon game. That's unfair to Oregon. You got a whole new coaching staff. You're going to go play the defending national champions. I don't care if you say it's a neutral field. That's a home game
in Atlanta,
for Georgia.
not a neutral field.
And Georgia, even though they won the national championship, they still feel for some reason like they don't get the respect. So they're out to make a point this year. And you didn't want to beat Oregon going into Atlanta playing Georgia week 1. So
my favorite. There was a tweet last night from one of the USC reporters. Apparently, the USC student section, when they started to get up in Fresno, started chanting, "We want Georgia, we want Georgia," and the USC football reporter just put as a tweet, "No, you don't.
Not yet.
No, you don't."
No, you don't. No. So how good is just how good is the Sun Belt this year? Every week they seem to amaze me with somebody else. So like this week we knew Liberty was a pretty good team, but Liberty and Wake Forest go down to the wire, 37-36. Liberty. We know Liberty's a good team. Marshall was kind of surprising and beating Notre Dame. Appalachian State, Troy yesterday, that was a great game. I mean, it's a shame that the Sun Belt only gets one New Year's Six bowl bid because they may have 2 or 3 teams.
Well, the other thing with those games is they always also typically involve the teams that are foolish enough to look past them.
Yeah.
You know, that I think that happens. Like, I mean, you saw like Virginia's pretty bad, and they weren't looking past ODU, and they beat ODU. UCLA is, God only knows what they are. They found a way to win. You know, and I think the thing about the Sun Belt teams is that they come in, they're ready to go, they're hyped, they're all set, but like at the end of the day, when you have time to prepare for them, they're not as good. It's kind of like my uncle's a baseball coach. He talks a lot about always the difference between playoff baseball and regular season baseball. And I think the same is very true in football. If you think about like how a Sun Belt team is going to do in the playoffs, when you're prepared for them and you're ready for them, you're gonna march through them.
Well, anybody that looks past Appalachian State, I question their coaching.
Oh,
that's how
exactly.
I feel about that.
Yeah, we learned that. We learned that in Ann Arbor. And actually, even in Ann Arbor, Lloyd Carr didn't look past Appalachian State. They were just a good team that won the game.
Yeah.
The fans look past. The fans look. We know the coaches from Michigan. The fans look past them, but the coaches weren't looking past them. They were the national champion. I mean, same thing you saw with because this was pre-Sun Belt. That was when they were national champions in 1AA. Same thing you saw with South Dakota State last night. You know, they're or North Dakota State. Sorry, it's been a long night. I was up till 6 a.m. with our show. Because that's how long, because the game went so late. I'm on the East Coast. But I mean, you're looking at the Bison they're national championship guys. So you can't look past them. And you know, Arizona didn't. It was a heck of a game.
And the other problem that happens, Tony, is you take a team that has good players and know how to win, you know, like an NDC, and you take another team who is good, but is kind of looking ahead, like, you know, that team has nothing to lose. And they got players that do know how to win when it matters. And so, you know, your players might not be playing their best that day, and they do overlook them. And I'll tell you what, a team that is good, even if it's a step below you, if you're not watching out for them, they come to play, because winning that game is like winning a national championship to that team, winning the, you know, Rose Bowl. You know, it's a big game.
It is, and they're excited for that. I mean, this is what those guys play. Those guys play in stadiums that hold like 10,000 people. So they're last night in Arizona Stadium in front of 60,000 people in the desert. And especially, I mean, and their coaches grew up. Their coaches know the idea of the desert swarm. Yep. They've got this is the thing they're playing for, and they're like, we can beat these guys, and it's awesome for them. And so, you know, I get all the kudos in the world to those teams, and same with those guys. Like, you know, one thing I thought was really well done. So UCLA waxed Alabama State, but I mean, the idea of Alabama State coming into the Rose Bowl. First HBCU team ever to go play in the Rose Bowl. You know, the whole like West Coast excitedly waiting for when the Marching Hornets marched into the Rose Bowl. And I don't know if you guys know this, but they actually put the Alabama State band on the Pac-12 network at halftime, because they were like, this is a big deal. And you know, in that case, like, I think UCLA was more prepared, probably. Like, they were like, okay, this is a historic moment and we need to be ready and up for it. And I think last night they were just not as prepared, but you know, they came out with the win. If you can beat the Sun Belt and you get the win, take it.
Well, and like, to answer Joey's question, think about this: the Sun Belt has beaten an SEC team. You know, they beat what, 2 ACC teams?
Yeah, I think so.
And the Big Ten team too.
What other, you know? The SEC right now, really, we beat Miami, who is supposed to be 11. That's, you know, our biggest non-conference win at this moment. Yeah. You know, you look at the Big 12
and Oregon.
Okay, yeah, Oregon
and Utah.
Oh yeah,
and Utah.
So we got 3 too. You know? So what other conference has 3? You know, the Pac-12. You guys beat
in Arizona too.
You beat, you know, so I mean, you got to have the Sun Belt at least, you know, 5th or 6th best conference right
Yeah,
now.
Sun Belt's a great conference, and the other thing that's cool about the Sun Belt is, you know, you've got institutions that do not have the advantages of everybody else. They don't have the money, they don't have the history. A lot of these are newer schools, they're newer teams, they're up and coming, they don't have the facilities, and they have fans that love it. You know, they have a tremendous amount of first generation college students. I don't know, did you guys watch game day yesterday? Did you guys see the sign contest that they did? For anybody who didn't, they always do a game day best sign contest. And the chancellor from Appalachian State, and this is a school that has a lot of first generation kids, it's a school that educates a lot of kids from like very poor regions of the mountains. And so the chancellor said the prize for best sign was a year of free tuition. And so they picked the kid, and the kid just went bananas and crazy. It was really cool. They said, okay, we have a consolation prize. What is it? Is it a water bottle or a gift certificate? Oh, it's from the chancellor. All 3 of you get free tuition next year.
Nice.
And like, I mean, you saw people like sobbing and hugging. Like this is just a really cool thing, and I think it's exciting that we've got the Sun Belt mattering, and I love it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to welcome in Nate. Nate, welcome in.
Hey,
Nate, look, Michigan had no trouble with UConn yesterday, but Michigan State must have missed the plane and got there late in the first half.
Yeah, our little brothers didn't show up like they're supposed to.
Well, the rumor I heard is that at the airport in Detroit, Eastern and Michigan State got onto the wrong plane.
Oh. That's pretty funny, actually. But even more funny than Eastern Michigan swapping whatever planes, that Michigan State lost to Washington, that Michigan won, blew them out last year at the Big House. So this is a different Washington team. Yeah. And plus, I don't know if you knew this, guys, but I actually looked this up, and I was actually surprised that the loudest college football stadium in history, I think, was Washington football stadium. I think I forgot the name, but
Husky Stadium.
Yeah, Husky Stadium. Yeah.
It literally is the sound of a jet engine. Like it's literally bad for your hearing.
Exactly.
Tony, you were talking about the sign. You were talking about the sign competition. I'll let you read that super chat there and answer it.
Yeah. I just want to say that
Favorite sign. Oh, I love this Sergeant Pickles. Who would win, $30 million recruiting class or some Mountain Boys? Sergeant Pickles, I love that.
Probably Mountain Boys.
Exactly.
But yeah, I would go to Washington or Husky Stadium if that were happen with that noise.
Well, and I'll tell you, one of my good friends from the University of Michigan was really, really bummed because Michigan was supposed to play Washington at Washington in the COVID year.
Yeah.
And he, because of a friend of his that works for SpaceX, was actually like promised one of the slots on Elon Musk's boat for the tailgating beforehand.
Wow.
And so he was devastated when that game got canceled.
I mean, the year after, we blew them out.
Yeah. They were so bad last year. And I'll tell you, you look at teams that have made amazing turnarounds and the difference that coaches can make.
Mm-hmm.
And, certainly, obviously Michael Penix came in. USC was a unique situation of a complete and total rebuild. Right. But Washington was not as complete a rebuild as that. But look at the impact of the new coach. Look at Kalen DeBoer, who's won at every level, everywhere that he's been. And he's got that team looking like the Washington of old. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Mrs. Sanchez, I agree with you. Let me put a comment up here. I like this. Mrs. Sanchez, she says, I'd like to take a day to thank Texas A&M for ending the Miami hype train. I agree. I agree with that.
But our good friend Sanchez. Traveling Fools could not have had a good night last night.
No, he did not.
He does the post-game show for Miami, right?
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet because I
I
was
haven't
up till
seen it
4 in the
either.
morning with our post game.
What was the score?
17-9.
17-9.
I know he was watching it with his friend.
Yeah, they
Miami
were
scored no
live streaming.
touchdowns.
Yeah, they.
So listen, everyone, give us about the 20 minutes, and we're going to set up a stream over on Patreon for our Patreon members, and I think most of us will be there for that. We'll talk about the top 25, and we'll go over the top 25 and tell you what we think about it and everything. But give us about 15, 20 minutes for me to get that stream set up and going, and get the links out to everybody. And I'll post a link to that over on the Patreon page. But anybody want to give a quick last word here to regular chat?
I would just tell anybody who's not a Patreon, it's not just these the shows you're going to get. I mean, you do get extra content, you get discounts in the store, and it does help Golden Blue Dude, produce more videos. And also, he does a prediction where the winner gets $20, and we're really close to where he's going to up it from $20 to $50. So think about it. You put a $5 donation and just win one of the $50. That's almost 1 year. It almost paid for itself. So, I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. All right, so guys, we're going to end this stream, and like I say, we'll all get together and be over there in about 15 to 20 minutes on Patreon as soon as I can get the link set up and get everybody on board, and we'll come over there and talk about the top 25. But thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you next Sunday. We'll do the same thing. We'll come on here for an hour, and then we'll go over to Patreon for an hour. All right, so thanks for everybody for being here. Thank you for all the super chats as well. Vanity Rose says, is the pack is doing enough for a better TV deal? Is the pack enough for a better
I don't
TV
think they
deal?
could do any better.
Let's
I
answer
mean,
that real
really,
quick.
I mean, they're doing what they need to do. And you know what? To some extent, so the last between the COVID year and last year, I mean, you guys, conferences do cyclical things, and the Pac-12 was at the bottom of that cycle. And so, I don't think that they're being particularly heroic, but I think they're being normal, and that's probably exactly what they need.
right. And unfortunately, with COVID, you guys kind of followed the Big Ten, which they blew it. I mean, the SEC, we went ahead with a 10-game, 10-conference schedule. The ACC said, come on, Notre Dame, join in with us for this year. We're going to play, a schedule. And the Big Ten's like, well, we don't want to play. And then
the crazy thing is, what we didn't understand is that at UCLA and at Stanford, like, they already had COVID protocols in the crowd.
Yeah.
Because there's no one there.
Yeah.
Who knew? Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew they already had? They already had. They're so on top of it at UCLA and Stanford. They already had COVID protocols.
I think Notre Dame's offense has COVID protocols as well.
Where?
Notre Dame's offense.
Notre Dame's offense.
Yeah. And Miami's offense last night too. All right, guys, let's wrap this one up.
There might have been monkeypox in the end zone. Actually, having seen that A&M yell practice, there might have been monkeypox in the end zone. And Miami wanted nothing to do with that.
But you guys got to think about the Notre Dame Marshall game. Notre Dame, the Queen had just died. Notre Dame said, we're going to do a moment of silence. The football team thought it was a game of silence.
A game of silence. There you go.
They would have got a better memo. They would have beat Marshall.
Although the Irish people are probably the ones. In fact, I've kind of laughed. This is not to be political, but I've kind of laughed at like the slight twinge of like Irish republicanism that is, showing what it thinks of the British Royals this week a little more than they would like.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. We'll meet you. We'll meet everybody over in Patreon. We hope everybody comes over there and joins us. Give me, like I say, 15, 20 minutes to get that link set up. Thanks for super chats, everyone. Thanks for being here, and we'll see everyone next Sunday.